Chapter 3 Israel. A light-hearted whistle slipped through Israel's lips as he pulled into the parking lot of the Patriot Peak Resort the next morning. He could not remember a happier day, at least in the last few months. Not generally a pessimist, he had felt the sadness creeping in on him the last few months in the military, and while he loved serving his country, that had been the first clue that it was time he got out. He wanted to live each day for God, and he couldn't do that if he let sadness and anger take over. Now, though, he felt like his life was a new book, like God had closed the covers of the last one and decided to plant him into another story. His shoulders felt lighter, the world seemed a little brighter, and he had a purposeful job with his friend. The only thing that would make this book even better is if he could find that special someone to spend his life with. Having grown up in a large family, Israel missed the noise of children running through the house, the squeals of laughter from them playing outside, and the pure joy that their innocent smiles seemed to inject into everyone around them. He knew he wasn't a woman with an internal clock ticking, but he suddenly understood what his mother had meant when she'd talked to his sisters about it. He wanted a wife and a family, and being patient was going to be one of his hardest tests yet. As he locked his truck, he heard the thud of something heavy dropping to the ground, followed by an annoyed grumble of mumbled words. Turning, he saw a woman squatting down and gathering items from the pavement. He jogged over to see if he could help. "Need a hand?" The woman glanced up at him, and his breath caught. It was Tiffany, the woman he'd been trying to talk to for days, but failing. Somehow, he either never crossed paths with her, or never had the right words when he did. "Sure, can you help gather the tools?" She gestured to the plastic tools scattered around. "Tools are my specialty," he said with a smile as he picked up a hammer. "Okay." She chuckled softly and shook her head, and it was obvious from her tone that she either hadn't caught his joke or thought he was a little nuts. Maybe both. "Because I'm the new maintenance guy and I work with them all day?" Israel could not believe he was messing this up so badly. He didn't normally have trouble speaking to people, but he'd always been shy around women he found attractive. And Tiffany was the most attractive woman he'd laid eyes on in a long time. He didn't even know what it was about her, but he felt she was a kindred spirit when he looked at her. Maybe it was the warmth in her smile or the sparkle in her eyes. Whatever it was clearly turning him into a tongue-tied idiot. Taking a deep breath, he tried again, sticking out his hand. "I'm Israel, the new head of maintenance." "Tiffany." She shook his hand, her head tilting as she looked at him. "Wait, Israel? From the wedding? Chance's best man?" Israel's chest puffed out as he smiled at her. She remembered him. "That's right. I'm surprised you remember. We didn't really get a chance to talk much that night." Tiffany laughed. "Yeah, I was pretty busy trying to be a bridesmaid and keep track of Lucas that day." Her eyes widened as if his name had jogged a memory. "Shoot, I'm going to be late." "Right." Israel quickly gathered the rest of the tools and dropped them into the open box. Sheesh, way to make a good impression. Here he was prattling on at her while she needed to get to work. That didn't stop the next question from falling out of his mouth as he picked up the last item, though. "What is all this, anyway?" "New toys for the kids. I've had a lot more boys the last few weeks, and I figured they would enjoy a hardware area. Of course, I have no idea how to put this together, but at least they can play with the tools while I figure it out." She bent down to grab the box, but Israel beat her to it, hoisting it up easily. "I could help you, if you'd like." He hoped he didn't sound as eager as he felt. If he did, he would probably send her running for the hills. He needed to play it cool, but he'd kind of forgotten how to do that. You don't have to do that. I'm sure you have real work to do. She reached for the box, but Israel shook his head.
I'll carry this for you. And really, it's no big deal. I finished everything on the list yesterday, so there's nothing waiting on me.
He needed to stop talking. He was starting to sound like a pathetic puppy, and that was not the image he wanted to plant in her head. Tiffany blinked at him for a second, and then chuckled softly. Yep, you're definitely new around here. I love this place, but there is something that needs to be fixed nearly every day. In fact, I'm pretty sure the sink in the childcare bathroom was backing up yesterday.
Well, then I'll fix that too.
Was his mouth incapable of staying closed? He clamped his lips shut, determined not to push again if she said no. Her gaze held his a moment longer before the corners of her lips lifted in a soft smile. Well, thank you. A sense of relief surged through him as she turned to her car and opened the back door. Her smile gave him hope that he hadn't completely destroyed her view of him. He waited while she grabbed more boxes from her back seat and locked the car. Then he fell into step beside her, unsure if he should keep the conversation going or allow the silence to remain. Tiffany shuffled her load to one side in order to scan her card at the door. So, were you in the military with chance? Israel nodded, glad that she'd taken the initiative this time.
I was, but I didn't re-enlist this last time.
He fell into step with Tiffany once more as they headed for the child care center. Why not? Israel hesitated. If he told her the truth, would he scare her away? He thought he might, but at the same time, he was looking for a woman with a similar desire to his own. If she didn't have that, then maybe it was better to know now.
There were a few reasons. I've seen a lot of tough things during my time in the military. Things that weigh heavy on you.
He thought of all the friends he'd lost over the years.
And I realized I wanted to settle down and start a family.
Oh. This time her cheeks flushed pink, but it only enhanced her beauty in Israel's eyes. Her mouth parted and then closed, as if she wasn't sure what to say to that, and Israel hoped he hadn't just made a huge mistake. Well, here we are, she said finally, opening the door to the child care rooms. You can just put that box down anywhere. Israel set the box down on one of the tables and glanced back at Tiffany, but her attention was not on him. Instead, she was focused on the items she'd carried in. Israel cleared his throat.
I just realized I don't have my tools to fix the sink, but I'll grab them and be right back.
Okay, thanks, but there's no hurry. I need to get set up for the kids who will be arriving shortly anyway.
Are you sure? It's no problem.
I'm sure. She flashed him a warm smile that melted his insides. Just add us to your list and come back when you have time.
I will. I'll get it done today, though, and help you with the bench if you still need it.
Sounds good. She began pulling items out of her boxes before looking up at him again. And Israel, it was nice seeing you again. Welcome to the family.
Thanks.
He hadn't thought this job could get any better, but the interaction with Tiffany told him that maybe it could.